Hello and welcome to a new video. This video is going to be dedicated to all of the blouses that I plan to make in this next season. It is currently the end of March, and over the next few months I'm going to be making a plethora of blouses, and I wanted to document the process, my thought process behind choosing each blouse and the fabrics I'm choosing for them, as well as at the end I will be reviewing each blouse pattern so that you can have an idea of how I feel at least about these blouses and whether or not you want to make them yourself. Hi, it's been quite a few months since I filmed that intro. I have been busy with other things and haven't had time to sew. It is currently June as I'm filming this secondary intro, and I am so ready for all of the pretty blouses. So I'm going to start with the Vetiver top by French Navy Patterns. I've made this multiple times. It is my all-time favorite blouse pattern so far. I have a few that I'm going to make in this video that I've never made before, but this one I've made many times, probably at least 5. In fact, I'm wearing one version today. This is the extension pack. So it came with this collar and these sleeves. I don't love the collar. I don't know if I put in the wrong thickness of interfacing, but it always seems to be flopping the wrong way. So I'm just gonna make the basic version from the original pattern, one with the ruffle. I really like where that hits me. It hits me just below my waist. So when I wear high-waisted pants like this, it's very flattering. In my wardrobe, I have these trousers that I got at the thrift store. They're size large, Old Navy. They're made out of rayon and then 10% polyester. And I got them because I was very pleased that the size large fit me, because I have really big hips and the size large has never hit me. So that made me feel really good. But I wasn't looking at the fit of the entire garment or the functionality of it. It is too short for me. I am 5'6". These come maybe to mid-calf. Also, these back pockets are fake, so I can't use them. So these aren't functioning for pants for me. I want to reuse this material in the Vetiver top. This pattern has a whole lot of smaller pieces. There's 2 front pieces, 2 side pieces, and then 1 back piece. And if need be, I can put a seam down the center of the back piece. And then the sleeves are relatively small and short. And then there's a ruffle. So I think I'll be able to squeeze all of the pattern pieces out of this. It's 15 minutes later. There was no way that I'd have enough to make a blouse out of it. I have this fabric that I got at the thrift store last summer. I believe it's cotton. It's a relatively stiff fabric, which I think works very well for this top. Maybe I'll play with stripes and do some pattern pieces this way and some pattern pieces this way, just for funsies. Hi, it's a couple days later. First, I made a plan about which direction I wanted the stripes to go on each pattern piece. And then I cut out each piece. Using the scraps between the pieces, I made bias binding to use later in the construction process. Then I attached the back panel to the side back panels using French seams, the most beautiful French seams I've ever made. I added the side front pieces to the front pieces, and those French seams weren't as good, but they were all right. Next, I attached the front and back pieces along the shoulder seam using a French seam again. And then I started the neckline by adding the bias binding around, understitching it, trimming the seam allowance. I started the button plackets by folding them the wrong way. I made the ruffle the way that the pattern suggested, but instead of using a ribbon to cover that seam allowance like I normally do, I just serged it. Then all in one stitch, you sew down the button placket, the neckline binding, and the ruffle. Next, I put in the buttonholes. I used my sewing machine for this, and it was very frustrating because I had to redo each buttonhole twice. The settings on my sewing machine kept changing without me changing them. That's why I had to keep redoing them. I also sewed in a label here. I finished the sleeves by, instead of hemming the bottom, I did the same bias binding method as I did for the neckline. I did French seams in the sides. And then when I attach the sleeves to the body, I'm not going to gather the top, I'm going to pleat the top just because I want to. So I'm here to talk about the next blouse that I'm going to be making, which is this one. Specifically this view without the gathered sleeves. I don't really have anything against gathered sleeves, I just like things to fit better under cardigans and stuff like that. I have this striped fabric that I got last summer. I don't know what it's made out of, but it doesn't wrinkle, so I don't think it's cotton. I will do a burn test on it, but I'm pretty well 90% sure that it's some sort of synthetic. I took so long trying to decide whether I wanted my stripes to go vertical or horizontal. I even considered doing one front panel horizontal and one vertical, and then I looked at a whole lot of different pictures on the internet to see which I liked better. I was so sure I was going to do horizontal yesterday, but then today I'm like, no, I'm doing vertical. And that's what it looks like in the picture as well. They're vertical stripes. I'm not going to do the pocket on the front because I think with this lapel neckline, it just looks a little weird having the pocket on the front. For summer, I'm most likely just going to be wearing this open over like a t-shirt or something, but in the winter I'll wear it closed under a cardigan. And so this is the next thing I'm going to be making. For your reference, I've decided that this is going to be a stripe video, so the next shirt I make after this one is also going to be stripes. Hi! It's been a while since I've talked to the camera, so I figured it's time to give you an update. I've just hopped out of the shower after my workout, so that's why my hair looks like this. After thinking about it for a few days, I decided not to make the 90s blouse because I actually kind of despise V-necks on myself. I don't like how they make my upper body look, so I didn't think that I would wear it. So I decided, why put the effort in making it if I'm not going to end up wearing it? So instead I'm going to be making the Belinda Blouse by French Navy. And as you know from the Vetiver blouse, French Navy is one of my favorite pattern designers. It's my first time making the Belinda blouse, and it's going very smoothly because her instructions are impeccable and the finishes are delicious. I'm enjoying myself. When I finished cutting out the Belinda blouse, I still had a lot of fabric left over, so I figured I would use this fabric to also make the Monique tee, which is another blouse that I wanted to make. This is a free pattern by Fabric Store. I will link it below. It's a very simple boxy tee, which is something I was wanting. I want to try incorporating more woven tees into my wardrobe instead of stretchy tees because generally they're made out of more sustainable and breathable fabrics. After I cut out the Monique top, I still had a lot of fabric left over, so I decided to cut out another one. But this time I made the stripes go the opposite direction just so that we could answer that age-old question, which direction of stripes is more flattering? I was initially planning on using the leftover fabric from the Vetiver top to make the Monique top, but after having worn the Vetiver top to work once and go out with my husband once, I found out that it is incredibly wrinkly. That makes it look messy and takes away from the classic vibes that I want it to evoke. So I don't know what I'm going to use the rest of that fabric for. I'm still going to wear the Vetiver top. I'm not going to iron it because that's not my lifestyle. I figured this fabric that I'm using for the Belinda blouse is a much more easy care. I did do a burn test. There is cotton in it, but it's a blend. It's a synthetic blend. There's some sort of plastic in there as well, but that also makes it so that it doesn't wrinkle and also means that I'm way more likely to wear it. All of the scraps left over after cutting out these 3 blouses, I changed into bias binding so that I could use that to finish all of the edges on the Monique tee because I want to make a really well finished but simple garment. Finish it as professionally as possible. While ironing the interfacing onto the collar pieces for the Belinda blouse, I realized that I had only cut one collar piece and one like collar stand piece, and I was thinking about what to do about this for a while, and then I was like, I know, I'll use the second yoke piece to cut out the collar pieces and that'll solve everything. But I also only cut out one yoke piece, and I didn't have any fabric left over because I had made it all into bias binding. I decided to use this white cotton that was in my stash. I very carefully placed it so that the white would be under the collar and inside the yoke. I put the collar on the wrong way initially, so I had to stitch rip it and reattach it, but that's fine. I had to decide on buttons. I had 5 buttons that I thought would look cute with this blouse. After putting it on my mannequin, I decided that this blouse is way more plain than I wanted it to be. I wanted this blouse to be classic and interesting, but I felt like it was leaning being more nerdy. So I thought maybe I could do an interesting button. So I laid out 5 different button options. I had red buttons, black buttons, purple buttons, shiny pearlescent buttons, and then pearlescent type buttons that weren't shank, they were 4-hole. I sent it to my family to do a vote. The winner was the red buttons, and I'm excited about that because I think that it'll add enough visual interest to this top to elevate it to the type of top that I want it to be. I have, again, just showered. Excuse my wet hair. I didn't really talk through the construction of the Belinda blouse, but I did show it over while I was talking about other things. So now I will move on to the construction of the Monique top. I constructed the Monique top following the instructions, sewing the shoulder seams, the sleeves, then the side seam under the arm, leaving 2 inches unsewn for the split. That was my least favorite seam. It was very fiddly getting around the underarm there. I pressed that seam open, hemmed the front and back and sleeves, and then added some twill tape to reinforce the split because I think that's the part that will have the most wear. Lastly, I finished the neckline with bias binding, which is my preferred method, and then I did the keyhole and finished the top with a hook and eye closure at the top of the keyhole. Continuing on the stripe theme, I cut out another styling tee out of some knit fabric that I thrifted a while ago. I decided on horizontal stripes because that is my preference after the experimentation of the Monique top. I still had a bunch of fabric left over, so I also cut out a Lago tank top, which is a free tank pattern I got a while ago. I decided to make the tank top first. I opted not to finish the seams because this fabric doesn't fray and I want to keep it as lightweight as possible, so I used a very narrow zigzag. I sewed the shoulder seams and attached the neck binding. I needed to top stitch the binding down, and to do that I needed to figure out my twin needle, and that scared me, so I skipped a few steps and sewed the side seams and armhole binding so that I could do all of the twin needle steps at once and not have to change my machine settings too many times. The twin needle was easier than I expected. This fabric isn't very stretchy, and I'm not sure if it's just because of the twin needle or if it's the fabric, but I found these seam finishes weren't as stretchy as I thought they would be, but because this tank top ended up pretty oversized, everything turned out fine. For the styling tee, I opted against adding twill tape to the shoulders like the pattern calls for because I wanted there to be less bulk. I tried to add the neckband, but there was no way the neckband binding would stretch around the neck hole. It is way too small and this fabric doesn't stretch. But I also had the same problem the last time I made this styling tee, and that fabric was much stretchier, so I think that probably this pattern piece is just too small. I dug through my stash and found no suitable fabric to recut this a bit bigger, so I decided to use fold over elastic instead, but I left that to the end so I wouldn't have to change thread colors yet. I decided to forego the twin needles for this one because this fabric isn't stretchy, so I just did a zigzag stitch. The fold over elastic went into the neckline fine, and actually I think this is my favorite top that I've made in this whole video. Hi. I'm here to finish this video because I need to get it edited so that I can get it uploaded. So let's talk through all of the shirts that I've made for this video. First we have the Vetiver top, which is a tried and true pattern for myself. I really like this top, unsurprisingly. I really like how the stripes go different directions. I really like how the stripes along my shoulders elongate the shoulder because they're horizontal there. I like the fit of it. I think that it's a very flattering shirt. The only issue that I have with it is the fabric I chose. I'm pretty sure 100% cotton and it wrinkles very easily. My solution for this is to hang it up in my closet instead of having it folded in my drawer like most of my blouses, and that seems to mitigate that problem pretty well. My thoughts on the pattern is I'm going to be continuing making this blouse. I love this pattern. Sewing the French seams on the curve is pretty tricky, but I do think that overall this is a beautiful blouse. Next up we have the Belinda blouse. It was my first time making this pattern. I think it turned out pretty well. I am pleased with how I fixed my mistake of not cutting out doubles of the collar or the collar stand as well as the yoke. I think that despite that, this turned out very beautifully. I'm very happy with my button choice. I think that the red buttons really make this dress shirt pop. In the try-on clips, I included how I'm going to be wearing it in summer as well as how I'd style it in winter. I do find that this this blouse is tight on my biceps. So if I were to make this again, I would definitely make the sleeves perhaps in the bigger size, but most likely I'd just cut down the pattern piece and add maybe an inch paper down the middle so that there's just a bit more room for my powerful biceps. As always, French Navy's instructions leave nothing to be desired. It's really well explained and it's impeccably finished. So I most likely will be making another one of these, but with bigger sleeves. For the Monique top, which I remind you is a free pattern, I did make the two different versions, the one with the vertical stripe and the one with a horizontal stripe. And here they are side by side so that you can decide which one you think is better, horizontal or vertical. I like both, honestly. I think that I will continue doing vertical stripes as well as horizontal stripes in my sewing career. They have different purposes, I think. And I think actually a wider stripe horizontally looks very nice and a thinner stripe vertically looks very nice. So it just depends on the thing that I am making and how I want to wear it, I guess. The vertical one I feel is better made only because I don't know what I did differently, but the horizontal one is too tight on my neck. I'm probably not going to keep the horizontal one, though I suppose I could redo the neck, but I don't need two identical shirts with the stripes just going different directions. I don't know what I'm going to do with this other one, but it's probably not going to stay in my wardrobe. Second last, we have the Lago Tank, which is a free pattern by Itch to Stitch. I will link it below. It was my first time using the twin needle, and I think that those seams, those edges turned out really well. I have not yet worn this out. I do think that it's a nice top. I think it'll be perfect for layering in the winter. And in the try-on clips, I showed it loose on my hips. I showed it tucked in all the way, which is how I'd most likely wear it. This fabric is not very breathable, but because it's such a loose fit on me, it's a very comfortable top to wear even in the heat. So I'm pleased with that. Last up, we have the Stellan tee, which is another free pattern. This is the one where I used fold over elastic for the neckline instead of the neckline band like the pattern suggested. And I think that it turned out really well. This is actually my favorite top out of all these ones that I've made. I've worn it a few times already. Actually, if I'm gonna tier rank them, this is the first, the Vetiver top is the second, and I feel ambivalent about all the others. The Stellan tee is a free pattern by French Navy Patterns. If you want to get a bit of an idea of why I love her so much, you can download that pattern for free. She does have a Stellan 2.0, which is not free, and it's just a bit upgraded, but I do think that the Stellan 1.0, which is what this is, turns out very nicely. I styled this 3 ways: loose, which I find very nice and comfortable, especially in the heat, with a French tuck if I want to feel a little bit fancy, and then tucked all the way in for if I'm going to be wearing it under a cardigan. I love this top. And that's all of the tops that I made for this video, which I am calling the stripe video. My next video is gonna be more girly, ruffly things. I was considering making a video of entirely free blouses, but I think that the style of the blouse is more exciting to me than the amount that the pattern cost. So I'm gonna be making my frilly blouse patterns in the next one. In the next blouse video. That's not gonna be the next video. The next video is my make, do, and mend video. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope I inspired you to make your own tops. I hope that you enjoyed the variety of patterns that I did, and that we perhaps answered the age-old question of which direction of stripe is more flattering. It doesn't matter. Wear what you want. That's all I have for you today, folks. I'll see you next time. Goodbye.